Hey guys, it's Dr. Drake 63 here again today, and going to talk a little bit about the Henry Big Boy in 44 Magnum. I'm curious how many of you guys are like me, where when you have a particular firearm and you like it, and it has any kind of issue at all, if you just can't rest until you work that issue out. I'm wondering how many of you guys are like me. I had a particular issue yesterday with this firearm, and it's mostly operator error, and that was this. I was loading this at the range and made the mistake of not paying attention to what I was doing, and had the breech open, had the lever open position, because I'd been down checking my target, and that's the way they like it at the range, is to have your action open. And I came back. I started dropping my ammo down the tube, put my tube back in place, and lo and behold, I couldn't shut the lever. And it was stuck. I couldn't do a thing about it, no matter how hard I beat on it and everything else. And the issue was real simple. Basically, with this lever in the open position, if you drop around down in back of it in that loading tube, it's going to prevent your lever from closing. And not only that, it's going to get stuck. So eventually what I had to do was take a mallet, after taking the tube out, a rubber mallet, and thump this buttstock pretty good to get it to come out. But it was the end of my range day. I don't normally roll with a rubber mallet. So that's one issue. And the other issue I've been having with this Henry is, keeping in mind shooting 44 Magnum, you've got all sorts of different sizes of 44 Magnum that are out there in terms of the bullet selection. The cartridge case is to standard, but you've got all sorts of different soft point, square nose, cast iron, hollow point, open tip, you name it. All sorts of different bullets get on there. And the rap I've heard doing research on these Henrys is they can be a little tricky. The other rap I've heard on them, unlike Marlins that I've owned, you do not have the ability to just sit here and go Chuck Connors, i.e. the rifleman, on these without getting some work done on them. And that's what I've learned shooting this out of the box. You need to have a deliberate action just like that. Deliberate. So when you tend to do speed stuff, you tend to be a little bit on a short cycle on the downstroke, and that's when your problems are going to begin. You're not going to eject brass all the way, and you're going to run into those kind of issues. So I just wanted to point out to you guys today that when firing this particular firearm, I think it's a great firearm. It's solid. It's quality. With this octagonal barrel, it is absolutely accurate as all get out. I have no complaints about that. But what it is not, out of the box, from the factory, is a speed shooter. And in comparing it to Marlins that I own, namely the 30-30 336 and the 1895 GBL, which is in 4570, both of those are able to basically cycle ammunition just as fast as I can run the lever, and that's out of the box. So depending on what you're doing. Now, I'm not a cowboy shooter. So when I go out and I do this stuff, I'm basically doing it because it's fun. But I'm not a cowboy shooter. So am I going to go spend money and have this modified, polished, fitted, refitted, whatever, tinkered with new springs, just so that it'll cowboy shoot 44 Magnums? No, I'm not. The round's too expensive for me to shoot. And in addition to that, I'm just not gonna. That's really not my interest. But my interest is from a hunting perspective. If I'm in the brush, or if I'm in a deer stand someplace, or a blind, and I need to do a follow-up shot, I don't want to be messing around with having ammunition get hung up. So the thing that I need to do with this firearm is very deliberately down up, and we're going to load up 10 rounds. I'm going to show you that here in a second. And I will not edit these out if these rounds don't cycle, guys. So this is just me being honest, truth in advertising. I don't work for any of these companies. So this guy's either going to handle it or it's not. I'm going to use something pretty generic here. Winchester White Box 44 Magnum. You can see the specifications of what this ammo is going to do. Okay, and what this is, it's got a soft point lead. You can see that right there. It's got a square nose, and I've had the most success running this type of ammunition configuration through this rifle. Okay, self-defense pistol 44 mag, big gaping hollow points, not so much, but something like this ought to do well. So let's see if we can get that. First lesson we need to learn here. Am I going to load it like that? No, guys, I'm not. There ought to be a sticker on here for people like me that are used to side loading gate type of scenario like the Marlin. There ought to be a sticker on here that says, "Hey, dumbass, close this prior to loading." If it means you have to hold it down or whatever you have to do, that's what you should do. We're going to go ahead and drop the full complement of 10 rounds. And then we're going to go ahead and fire this. As I mentioned, using a deliberate downstroke, a deliberate upstroke. You don't want to pause in the middle. You really don't want to do that with any lever action. But this is the type of ammunition. If this rifle isn't going to properly cycle this, then I'd consider it a problem, and it's going to have to go back to the factory. So let's see what we can do. Obviously, as loud as this thing gets, you want to have some hearing protection on. There's no doubt about it. So firing at some targets about 25 yards away, some water bottles. Let's see if we can hit one of them. Yeah. Yeah. And that's the last one. If you notice, not super smooth on my part on the ejection. So I'm going to load it up and go ahead and try it again. Again, another 10 rounds. This time we're going to use something a little bit different. I'll show you what that is. Okay, you can see where taking a direct hit with one of those in the water bottle just shreds these guys. And as you can see, not the biggest target to shoot at 25 yards, but hey, if I can't hit these, I'm not going to hit a deer. So this time around, we're going to use this particular ammunition. It's PPU. It's jacketed hollow point. So what you have a little bit different on this one, you do have a hollowed out point. How does this differ from the Winchester? Well, the Winchester and this particular brand have the tiniest bit of difference. It's pretty much negligible in terms of the size of this bullet. Shouldn't be a problem, but we're going to run 10 of these real quick and see how the PPU does with the jacketed hollow point. Now we're going to try that PPU and see if that cycles just like we need it to. Same thing, I'm shooting at some water bottles. Yeah. Okay, got a little bit of a hanger here. Okay. So we'll watch that tape playing back. Maybe it's possible I didn't come all the way down. Now, one thing that I am doing, I'm not putting all 3 fingers in this loop. I definitely probably want to put a big loop lever on that so I can comfortably get all 3 of my fingers in here. So this might be part of my problem, is a little bit of play here. We're going to run another 10. This time we're going to make sure that we have everything as far as all 3 fingers going through this loop. And again, we're going to use that same ammo again, the PPU, because we did have that one get hung up. And obviously that's the kind of stuff I want to know why. Okay, we're going to run another 10 rounds of the PPU through here. Again, I'm using the full magazine capacity, because usually when you're going to have problems, it's going to be when you do that. And secondly, as I mentioned, I'm going to put all 3 of these fingers through this loop, which really is the advised technique. Keep in mind, like I mentioned, I want to know this thing's going to do the job for hunting. For hunting, I'm not going to take 10 shots. But as a guy that's used to going out and firing rapid fire with M4 derivatives, with AK derivatives, usually if something's not going to function correctly, then it's going to bother me. So I have to, one thing to you to understand, this is a lever action gun. The technology on this is 130 years old, something like that. So you have to factor all this kind of stuff in. But the bottom line is I suspect that most of the problems I'm going to have operating a firearm like this are going to be operator error. So let's see how we can do here. I guess we can see what a little recoil will do. This 44 Magnum is a take no prisoners kind of affair, without a doubt. If it hits something, it hits it with a lot of impact, so that's always fun to watch. Okay, well, just a couple things. I did notice that this Winchester with the flat nose, that soft lead tip, consistently cycles a lot better than this jacketed hollow point. And I kind of found, if you look at my original Shooting the Henry video, you're going to see also that where I did run into problems in the past was with the hollow point type bullets. Now it doesn't mean you can't use them, but definitely these types of firearms back in the day they were designed, and certainly now, are going to do better in my opinion with a flat nose kind of scenario. Other thing I noticed too when I was shooting the last 10 that included the two water bottles going up in the air, I a couple times didn't have this lever all the way closed when I was shooting, and it would let you shoot, but then it would kind of create issues with it getting hung up. So one thing you want to make sure is that you always get this closed all the way. Feel that positive click. The other thing is just getting used to the fact that, look, this is a slightly different, what I'll call, throw than I'm used to with the Marlins. Marlins tend to go out just a little bit more, and when they come back, they lock up in place a little bit differently. So part of this is muscle memory, there's no doubt about it, but a fine firearm, I think it's just important to know the ins and outs of whatever gun you're shooting, whereas you can grab pretty much any modern firearm in 5.56 or 7.62, something like that, and the ammo doesn't vary as much, and they're going to be, typically the better ones are going to be more reliable without ever any feeding issues. Lever actions do have feeding issues from time to time. There's a reason that we're not carrying those in the field today. It is a little bit of a throwback, but in terms of taking this hunting, I'd have absolutely no qualms at all about it. If you said, hey Dave, let's speed shoot this sucker and enter a cowboy shooting competition, the answer is going to be no. I don't think so. Not without getting some work done on it, or I might look into getting a different firearm in that case. The other thing to keep in mind, if you're shooting Rossies, if you're shooting Brownings, whatever you're shooting, you're going to find with all these firearms that they have their differences and their nuances. They can be a little picky. But sticking with a square nose bullet, lead tip like this Winchester right here is definitely the way to go for this firearm. And again, this is going to be about practice, practice, practice. Okay, well, we've got a little bit of brass to pick up here today, and then be on our way. But we've enjoyed doing some shooting out here today, and just having a real brief discussion on working the lever on a Henry 44 Big Boy. I have seen on discussion forums and things like that and the internet that there has been a number of guys that I think mostly just aren't used to working this kind of a rifle, that have had some issues with hang-ups and things like that. I read a thread today. It was on one of the Marlin rifle forums that talked about the Henry. And specifically, a guy was having problems and didn't understand why he was having the firearm not work after loading it with the lever open, i.e. the breech open. And as I showed you earlier, that's just a recipe for disaster every time. And I sat there and I read through 25, 30 responses of so-called experts, and nobody was able to basically tell this guy, close the lever before you shoot. Close the breech, I mean, before you load. So I'm getting distracted a little bit here by this train whistle going off. But anyway, I hope this is helpful to you. I personally don't see a need to send this rifle off or have anything done to it. I just need to understand that it is a continual, don't stop at the bottom motion when you're cocking your lever. Don't try to do it too fast, because typically if you do, you're not going to go through the full cycle, and then you're going to have jamming issues. And number three, at least for this particular rifle, hollow points do not work as well as a square nose, and I'm sure the cast would work very well in this as well. I hope that helps you. This is DR Drake 63 reminding you, join the National Rifle Association, guys. I believe they have our backs. Have a good day.